Hello, everybody. I'm back with another episode of Hammer Meet Anvil, this time with mapper Oskmos. He's a longtime veteran of the CS Source mapping community as well, the Source Engine mapping community in general. He's obviously been around for quite a while. And as I was just getting started talking with you about this before we went live on the recording, Oskmos, one of the things that I saw was that you had this video on your YouTube channel detailing some of the maps you made back in the day for Half-Life 2 and CS Source. And you had started to tell me how, you got into it where you didn't really make any maps for the older Half-Life games, but when you saw the trailer for Half-Life 2, it kind of made you excited for map making in general. And that was the essential opening question that I had for you was there a specific point or thing about the Half-Life 2 trailer or about Half-Life 2 in general that inspired you to start making maps in the way that you do? Because your style is quite unique compared to map makers who maybe want to go for a more competitive, like polished edge, we'll say, regarding the gameplay of CS. Obviously, you're most famous for Insertion and now Insertion 2. So those maps, obviously, they're not demolition maps, they're hostage maps. They've got their very own kind of gameplay style, even amongst the hostage sort of map base, we could say. So was there something about Half-Life 2 specifically that spoke to you and has carried through all these years, or was it more of a one-off thing? How would you describe your introduction to map making?
Well, now when you ask us, I think, and I think the Half-Life 2 trailer, I think it's the first time where a video game felt real.
Okay.
I think the first one I saw, I think it's called Trap Town or whatever. It's like a Ravenholm segment, but it was a physics, and then that trailer was heavily scripted, but like the enemies moved in a way, and the whole thing just felt real. And then after that, I remember, well, that's 2003 or something. I was maybe 12, 13 or something, and I was just looking around in the real world, like, oh my god, how can I make this into a video game? Like, so I started like looking at my surroundings in a different way, and I guess that is that's what I'm doing. Sort of, I'm taking my surroundings and putting them into the game, especially Insertion 2. Like, I've been contacted by several people that recognize the different areas, and it's all very close to where I live. And I say, oh yeah. So yeah, it's to capture. What was the question? Like what got me into it?
Yeah. What about the Half-Life 2 stuff? It sounds like a lot of the impetus, the motivation for map making for you is to sort of take the real life environments and try to translate them into the video game world. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. And I guess it comes down to like to make the video game experience feel more authentic or whatever.
Right.
Like it feels real, and that's really, that's a very exciting thing, I think.
Was there just out of curiosity, when you decided to boot up Half-Life 2 right after the trailer, did it carry through from what the trailer promised? Did it feel like real to you at the time as well, or was that more of like it looked really good in the trailer but didn't really work out in game? Like, how did you feel when you first booted up Half-Life 2 for that?
No, I don't remember any such disappointment, or it was magical, like the whole experience, I think. And I don't know how old I was then, 14 or something.
Right, yeah.
Very, was it impressionable? Is that a word?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So yeah, now I love Half-Life 2. And then when they released the tools, like I never really built maps for Half-Life 2 or like single player stuff. I never really got into the technical aspects of like making the NPCs do what you want them to do, and I would just wanted to just build the environments, and then so multiplayer, Half-Life 2 deathmatch, and then Counter-Strike is more the rules are already set. It's pretty easy. You place spawns. That's the technical aspect. And then you just have to make the world basically. So that's
Something that I've noticed when I was playing through some of your maps in general is that you play around with visibility a lot, right? Obviously, you've got the fog in Insertion 1 and 2, and then in Library, which is a map that's probably lesser known to some people, you have obviously all the bookshelves and how they're a bit destructible and stuff, and so you can actually kind of move the environment around. So you say you're not super interested in the technical stuff behind trying to make it so that all the say the bots in the game do specific things or whatever. But one of the things that I noticed just in general is that bots absolutely destroy me on these maps, because obviously they don't have the same limitations of like seeing through the fog or anything like that. So I was curious as to like along some of these lines, when you're testing the map, do you just have like a group of friends do it, or is there something about that, just placing down the spawns and letting the bots sort of run around? Is that a way that you test it as well? Because or is testing even that important for maps like these? Because obviously something we've seen more recently in the Danger Zone community, admittedly, where it is harder to test, is that people are releasing giant maps, years worth of work or months worth of work, and they haven't actually been able to test it, and they still end up finding some pretty good success. It's almost like if they were designing from first principles, designing well, then it just kind of works out. What's your workflow regarding testing?
Well, if I guess for library, well, that's actually quite like I built that map as a 2v2 map for me, my brother, and our two cousins to play in the LAN. So it's like, and that was first made for Counter-Strike Source. But then, yeah, that wasn't professional in any way. So no testing really. I guess it's fun to place the bots in the map and see how they move around and just try to like, if it's one-sided or some data there. But that's but for the insertion maps, I've basically done no testing at all. In the first insertion, I did some testing, but then it was already sort of done, the whole map. But then I got like feedback, even playing it myself. But like, so the biggest change of the feedback from that map was I added the small red house, like an extra house,
right?
Because it was difficult to approach, and that. And then some feedback from Valve, but I made it simpler in the main villa. But Insertion 2, I haven't play tested at all until I released it. And I thought I was planning on doing it, but then they broke fog, so you can see the enemies through the fog. And I figured that the gameplay data isn't gonna be that valuable because it's like a whole different thing. So I was pushing the playtest until they released a fix for it. But then I was like, wow, I can't just sit on this finished map.
Yeah.
So I just released it. And it's been up on the Faceit, like what's it called? Yeah, the Map Core Hub or something. So we played it a bunch during the release weekend with the broken fog, but it was still quite fun. And then I got some good data as well, and like a good feel for the map. And then I made some small changes, but like overall, like if I were to gray box this whole map, which is like the whole experience is like to get into the ambience and the feeling of this location, like how you that's the experience. And I can't really like so gray boxing that is impossible because you don't get that emotional. And then also having this huge gray box map, I'm like, oh nice, now I'm gonna art dress this and too much work. I would never. I tried doing that because I know that's the way, but then I'm looking at it and it doesn't feel good. It doesn't look nice, and I don't get a feel for it. And I'm like, it's so much work and demotivating. So I just for Insertion 1, I made the building first, the main house, and I started with a kitchen. I made a really nice kitchen, and you can actually see that on that map. The nicest part of the whole map is that kitchen. Because all the cupboards, what's it called? Yeah, the door, everything is in hinges and so physics stuff, and there's like you can shoot the doors and they fly around, and there's like stuff in there in the cupboards as well. And then I just sort of made a map around that, made a building around that first, and then a map. And Insertion 2 was a bit different. I just started making. First, I started making forest assets, and then I was like, yeah, but now I'm gonna start working on the actual map. And then I just I knew I wanted roads on my map, so I built the road to like try to get the curb looking nice. And that's like, oh, this looks nice. I'm gonna keep building from here. So it's like that's the road right outside the dentist office, which turned into like a difficult because there's value in starting in the center and most important area of the map. Now I built around the center basically, And then I had this center, and like, what? But I'm supposed to build an interesting like hostage. Not the rescue, but the hostage. It's a hostage situation.
Yep.
In the center, and I don't have much like room to use. So that was I made it more difficult for myself than I had to there.
Well, that kind of speaks to your workflow, right? Because obviously you have the, like you just said, so the correct way, if we were to write it down, the one that works for most people is to gray box it out, test the layout, because that's the easiest one to make changes to. Sorry?
And then send it to someone else.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. But even as a one-man job, I would imagine a lot of people do have, like, maybe they art some things along the way, but for the most part, I would imagine they leave that to the other side. Whereas you obviously are more in it for the ambience, and that's one of the things I wanted to push you on a bit more out of curiosity, because when we have a lot of maps out there that's almost like the niche is already filled for people who are making like competitive layouts that maximize visibility, that take care of like angles and make sure everything makes sense. Whereas, you're obviously more focused on like, does it feel real? What is the thematic? What is the style? What is the experience like? And there is something to it. I will say that when I play it, like I played it a couple of games on my stream earlier, I played it a couple of games just offline. And even when I'm just up against bots or up against a small number of people, like there's an experience had where like you see the CTs emerge from the fog and start marching towards you. Like that's something we just don't have in Counter-Strike outside of your insertion maps. And then you've got the variants that are obviously dusk and night that add another flavor to it if people wanted to play it at a different setting that maybe even has less or more visibility problems, you would say, but has a better thematic in some aspects, depending on what people want. So how do you settle on like the initial thematic of something like Insertion 2? Did you go into it knowing you wanted the fog and you wanted all the woods and the, people would say the bad visibility, but did you come into it knowing you wanted that kind of thematic, that experience? And how did you build that in the initial drafts?
I think the fog I think it's quite fun, and it allows me to build a map that looks like how I'm gonna say this. It can look however it wants, because I don't have to worry about these very long sightlines. If I didn't have the fog, there would be a sniper sightline like I don't know 10,000 units. The fog right now is capped at 3,000 units. So I think it's a quite good distance. But if I didn't have it, and then it's Source, of course, Source engine, so I can't really build this kind of map.
Yes.
And when I don't know if they added it now, but when I did the first one, they didn't even have support for LODs,
right?
For the meshes. So everything was LOD 0. So so I used the fog for an optimization thing, and then also it's just more fun because then I can focus on. I'm working on this area right now, and I have to think about what's around this area in like a smaller circle. And, then if I didn't have fog, I would have had to gray box the entire map basically.
Right, exactly.
And thematically, well, the first one is like the idea goes way back. Like I found a piece of paper for a map. It's in the YouTube video there with what do you call it? Yeah, with all my it's called the rain. It means rain.
Okay.
An early sketch for that map had like a T spawn in the center and then CT spawns all over the place. So that's sort of the first one of the trace of this idea, and that I found a sketch from 2008, and then Insertion 1 came out 2013, I think. But and then I just had the idea of like a villa in the forest, and then you have to guard it from all angles. Sort of, it was just an idea that just seemed fun.
Sure, yeah.
But then it was like the rural, barns and fields and
So you had the idea at some point then to also allow the CTs to pick their spawns as well by moving up towards a specific van or a specific truck. In Insertion 2, it's even more involved where there's a bunch more, like you have these 4 distinct zones that you can walk through. Yeah, so I was wondering how that kind of came to be, because that adds a layer of choice and sort of pre-planning strategy that you don't actually normally get in normal CS. Like if you're watching a competitive CS match, you know that they maybe talk over like, oh, I got the spawn for Dust 2, I'll go long with an op, something like that. But it's very like random, there's not really much choice there. Whereas in this case, like the team can pre-plan. They can say, I want like 2 forest, 1 houses or something, they can sort of allocate how they want to approach. So what was the inspiration for that? Was that also in Rain, the map that you referenced earlier?
No, I think that map turned into a what's it called? FY. I guess it's
Right.
Farmyard or something. So it's just a regular map without any objectives. But I guess once you have that idea, because I made an old map called Contour, it means office, where the CT spawns on top of the roof and then the T spawns on the top floor, scattered around. So that idea, I guess, is sort of similar. But then when I made it into an action, I don't really remember when this idea came, but I think it's a pretty natural. Like, yeah, the one team is defending, the other team can come from everywhere.
Right.
But it's you're a team and you need to plan and make decisions. And that's fun. So it's like, how I can't just place random spawns. So I guess yeah.
So it's just a natural extension, right? Like
yeah. Okay. Like, without it would have been like absolutely ridiculous map.
Yeah, it would have been very chaotic, right? And you still get the fun chaos of like, oh, where are they coming from? But there's an element of choice to it that allows people to do it. So in that sense, I mean, I can't think of any other map that like predates Insertion and allowed for this kind of mechanic. I haven't even really seen any maps other than the maps you've made that you facilitate this kind of thing, where you have the opportunity to pick your spawns in that way. I'm sure some of them will exist, and maybe somebody in the comments can clue me in. But for the most part, I would imagine it seems like a pretty novel idea in the CSGO community. So when this ships, and especially when it gets added to the operations, right? Because it started off in Breakout, came back for Hydra later. Was there a lot of feedback that you had to sift through here? What was the process like when it finally got added to, like, by Valve to an operation in this sense, was played by a ton of people?
Oh yeah, so I had my map library in the game. So I had like, but that in the beginning you had to like upload it on Workshop and then get a lot of upvotes for Valve to even see it, sort of. But then I had my my line of communication with Valve after that library map. And the motivation from like, oh, I can make money doing this. That was a big motivator. So I started working on Insertion, and then when I was sort of almost done with it, I sent it to the guys at Valve, and then they played it and they liked it. So I don't think. Oh yeah, because I uploaded on the Workshop with like an ugly image, so no one downloaded it basically. So then when it was done, the way the Workshop works is, it was already like lost in the, and I didn't have a Twitter or anything where I could plug it. So it was just, when it got into the game, it was like a surprise for everybody, I think.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, then the feedback was 50-50 love and hate.
Of course, yes.
I wasn't mentally prepared for the hate, but now I've learned. So it was a bit rough there in the beginning, but yeah.
Did you ever consider, like, because of the influx of negative comments in some cases, right? You said it was kind of 50-50. So was there a point where you were thinking like, oh, I've made a big mistake, or like, or did you just know that like these people, they just didn't like that style of map, so they were going to, maybe they died too much on it, so they're upset about it, or they're bad at it or something. There's all sorts of different reasons why you might get negative comments that might not be related to the map actually being bad, right? But that's all people will say most of the time when you get like general comments. So how did you like respond to that in general?
Well, I don't know who said it. Someone smart said that something along the lines of like, if you make some work of art or whatever, entertainment, anything, creative thing, and if it doesn't bring up any emotions, then it's bad. But if you get like a lot of hate and a lot of love, then you made something really good. So I took that with me.
Okay.
comfort. No, but I was just surprised at like how people can like. Well, it was a lot of personal attacks, and that like doesn't make any sense.
Of
And it was
course.
also like because Valve they had these missions. Was like, I don't know, play or win 6 maps on Insertion, and it was like all these randomized missions. So people got that mission, and then they had to play this map, and they hated it, and that frustration I think ended up in a lot of like PMs or DMs.
Sure.
So, but yeah, I'm fine.
Of course. And about the positive feedback then, was there anything that came out from that, or constructive criticism maybe, that helped you improve the map? Was there like a specific set? Because you said you did make it some changes, some of the feedback you got from Valve, other feedback you got from other people just in the community or people who are responding. Was there anything that just made a lot of sense? Because you said you also simplified the map a bit. So I'm curious as to how that process went and what you decided needed to be changed.
I can't remember anything specific, like yeah, I think it was when I was playing them.
Okay.
And also maybe some comments somewhere, but like analyzing feedback, and like I don't think there were much specific feedback except from Valve. There was like, yeah, the interior in the villa is way too cramped, so and it was really ridiculous in the first like version. But then it was like me playing it and just, this doesn't feel right. Approaching from across the field, and then you have the villa right there. And like there's nothing in between that I can move up to. So the little extra house there worked. And then it was like, yeah, in the barn, top floor there, you can like guard the back entrance.
Yep.
And there was a window behind you, but you can get up there. So I added like, so you can boost up there, and then yeah, some rocks, like very specific, like areas. Like this area needs a rock.
Right. So small changes to essentially like improve the areas, but for the most part, the layout itself. It sounded like you said earlier. I think the biggest change was adding that red house to add some cover, but otherwise the layout mostly remained the same. It was just small tweaks that needed to be changed.
Yeah, it was like no changes made to the layout. And I remember reading some review or something about the map. Like it's a very well designed, thought out layout. I'm like, really? Felt yeah, it's like no, it's the opposite. I haven't thought it out at all. I just built it.
Right.
I guess I have some sort of intuition for it. I don't know.
Yeah, and especially after making Insertion 1, and then you spend 4 years, of course, working on Insertion 2, there's got to be a certain amount of like just trusting in the process and allowing yourself to make the work and see what it looks like at the end. So there must have been a little bit of a lesson there where like people think it's very well thought out, even though I just kind of slapped it together. So I must sort of know what I'm doing, right? Like was there some sort of takeaway you had after Insertion 1 left the map pool and you kind of started to work on Insertion 2 some? Was there anything in particular that made you think like some lesson learned essentially from the whole process?
I think like in the now approaching release for Insertion 2, I was actually really worried that the map might suck. It's like the more time I spent on it, the more like the bigger, what to say, bigger.
There's some doubts.
Yeah, but like if it's bad, the worse the fall is going to be, or yeah, I don't know how to say it.
Sure.
But then I was actually like, there was 2 things that stuck with me from the feedback from Insertion 1. One was like get rid of the fog. But then, so I thought I was going to build Insertion 2 without fog. But then it's like, I can't. It's too much work. It's too difficult. I enjoy too much to just, go crazy. And then the other feedback was that the center should be more of a compound, easy to defend, and like clear, like where it begins and where it ends, and like so it's more, so you can have it more like spaced out, I guess. Which is one thing that I failed with Insertion 2 as well, I think, because there is no compound. This even more complicated and difficult than the first one. So that, in a way, I guess maybe it's not.
Well,
But
you've got the three different potential spawns for the like spawn buildings, right? For the hostages, they have some variants there, and I guess to my knowledge, you can confirm this. It only randomizes once per map, right?
yeah, per match or game.
Yeah. So you can either have them in the apartment building, the big building, or you can have them in the pizza shop or in the supermarket. So there's those three different buildings. Once those are on the mini map, then both teams kind of know like which areas they should be fighting for. I think it would be quite dynamic in that sense where if you don't end up having like an apartment building spawn, then that might end up meaning that you use that area less, even though it's pretty useful as a vantage point. So you have to like at that point you're far away from the action of the actual spawn. So if they do take it very fast, I guess the only concern I would have, and maybe you can tell me what you thought about this, is obviously like the choke points of normal maps are kind of tailor made for smoke grenades and incendiaries and stuff, right? So was this something that you had attempted to like on a basic level as you were building it? Did you attempt to make some areas that could be more blocked off with smokes or used more, or was that not really something you thought of?
No, I haven't like catered to like classic Counter-Strike gameplay
Sure.
at all. I guess like, well, it's a shooter and it needs a certain like things like yeah, no spot should be like way more powerful than the other, so it needs to have some sort of balance, of course. But yeah, I didn't. But I don't know. Every door can be smoked, I guess.
Sure.
But yeah, I a lot of people say it's not competitive. This map is not competitive, and I never really understood that. Same with Insertion 1. Like competitive is just if we decide that we're gonna compete or not.
Sure.
Like you can compete in everything. So, but like it's just if we're gonna play, just relax and play casual, or if we're gonna like focus.
Right.
But I don't think the map. Sure, it has to be like balanced in a way, but then it's also like it doesn't need to be balanced. Even if it's a very one-sided map, there's still same amount of rounds per team. So it's maybe a much more boring competition then, but you can still like whatever is thrown at you, you can compete in it. And I guess that's also a little bit what I'm like my I guess design mentality or whatever. That I create a situation, like deal with it, and then a lot of feedback, like, "Oh, but it's so difficult." Like, yeah, it's not easy to rescue hostages.
Yeah. Fair enough. Actually, I wanted to ask you about the hostage one specifically because obviously, like, I could imagine a map that has some elements of Insertion 2 or Insertion 1 where you pick your spawn as CT, you can spawn from multiple angles, you converge on to defend a certain area, or maybe you pick your spawn as T instead because you're attacking, but you plant the bomb like a more traditional map in that sense, right? Demolition or defuse rather. So when you have was there ever any time where you thought about that as the objective, or do you have like some specific preference for hostage gameplay instead? Because I'm curious as to why was Insertion 2 a hostage map just because you wanted like Insertion 1 was and it's a sequel, or was there any thought process? Did you ever consider maybe making Insertion 2 diffuse map instead?
I think I've thought about it, but then it's like, yeah, I don't want to mess with the diffuse crowd.
Oh,
Like
okay.
I think that would be difficult. Like yeah, I'm not sure, probably not. But then I think it's sort of almost on most of my maps for Counter Strike has been hostage. I think it's just more fun when you like. Yeah, the most tense moment of a hostage rescue is like you're running and like you're getting chased and it's like
Sure. Yeah.
you can't see it. And then but in the most tense moment in a diffuse is like you're just sitting there waiting or like it's
Yeah, or the
slower.
retake or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, everything can be like super exciting, but
Sure. Yeah.
I think in a casual gameplay sense, it's more fun. You grab it and you run.
Right.
You have to
Always
cover.
moving. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think now, like in the beginning when the bots were like 4 NPCs walking behind you, then I really get the point. Like we can't compete in this game mode. It's ridiculous. But now they've changed it. I don't think there's any arguments to why they shouldn't compete in hostage as well.
Okay, interesting. So it's something that you think, like you said earlier, your mindset is you could be competitive. Like being competitive is a mindset itself, right? It's not like it's not something that has to be based around the map. There's certain things that the map has to do to make sure that there's not like only one spot, like you said, that's like ridiculously powerful. But as long as the players have different tools to help them with that, and there's things that can be done. So I'm a big fan personally of experimentation in that sense. I think like nobody can argue at this point that the competitive professional map pool is stale. Like it's very obvious that it hasn't changed in like something like 2 years now. The changes that have come through for the maps in there are pretty small. So I'm not sure if you pay much attention to the competitive side of things, or if you consider too much like how the game is evolving, or maybe not evolving in this case, or what new maps are coming in. But do you see any other maps that have come through, maybe from the community or from Valve themselves, that have some sort of potential in them in this way, where there is some experimentation? You could see them going a different direction, or do you think mostly things have stayed pretty similar?
I was more like into watching Counter-Strike maybe 3-4 years ago, and then like I watched it I don't know a month ago or something, and yeah, it's the same. So, well, I don't know. I don't pay much attention to what's happening. I've been busy with work and life, and then I'm just making this map sort of.
Of course,
I haven't even played Counter-Strike for 4 years, basically.
And now that you finally released the map, maybe you can, right? Maybe you can get some.
Yeah, I'm only playing my own maps.
Yes, of course.
And when Insertion 1 when it was in the game, that was the only map I was playing. I like it.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, that's one of the things that I think maybe some people don't see from the outside, is a lot of people who are creative, who make some content or make a map or make a game or something. They're doing it usually because there's nothing else out there like that they can play. They want to play something like that, so they make it because nobody else is, or they haven't found anything like it. That's been my experience anyway. Is like why I started this channel to talk to mappers in the first place. Right? Is like nobody else is doing content like this, so I might as well do it myself. So like stuff like that, I think the motivation is sometimes not understood by like people who are just playing a map, and they think maybe everybody is trying to make a competitive map that gets added to Valve's map pool and played by professionals or something. Whereas, like you just said, like if you're satisfied with the map, that's probably all that needs to be done, right? It's, in a way, that's like the main goal. So when you set out to work on Insertion 2 4 years ago, was there specific other goals that you wanted, or did you just want another map that was high quality, that you enjoyed, that delivered gameplay and thematics that you liked? Or was there something specific you wanted to accomplish with Insertion 2?
Well, I had worked at the DICE, working on Battlefield 1, and I learned photo scanning there. I was a 3D artist, and then I just had all these new skills, sort of. And then Insertion 1 got added to the game in Operation Hydra, I think it was, the second one. Yeah. And then that just was a lot of motivation coming from the money, and then also, well, maybe it was mostly the money. I don't know. No, but the whole thing of having your map in the game is exhilarating, how to say. So that, I got a lot of motivation from that, and then I just love it. I've been making these maps since 2004. Oh, I don't know if they released the SDK then, but
long time.
It's just, it's just it's like I use the same tools. I model my 3D modeling in Softimage XSI, like the thing that came with the SDK back in the day, or I can't remember how it worked, but it's like, and it's been discontinued. Like no one uses it, and I'm still sitting in that too. And it's just something very satisfying about making some 3D prop and then importing it into Hammer, and like, now this is real now. and it's like
Yes.
I don't know, especially from coming from like Half-Life 2. Like I remember I made my first oil barrel, my first prop. I got it in and like it didn't have the texture and like it was so difficult. And then I finally managed to get it in, and it's like my oil barrel standing next to the Half-Life 2 oil barrels. It was like it's a very strong, surreal emotion. And then that, I still have that creative urge, I guess.
Yeah, maybe we can talk a bit about your workflow as a result, because obviously, like you said earlier, you started up learning about this photo scanning stuff from Dice, and that is a big part of how you produce the props and the different models and things that are scattered around. And as you were, I mean, I've been following the hashtag Road to Insertion 2 stuff that you've been putting on Twitter for I've probably at least a year now, if not longer. It's crazy to think it's been that long, but you had the supermarket props and like the fruit and stuff that was out there, and a very large amount of time looked like it went into developing all these props. Can you say a little bit about like how that process looks and what you find most rewarding about all that? Is it still the same thing that like it's so nice to see your own props in the map? Is that the main drive?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Like because I don't use any custom, or what's it called? Yeah, the base CSGO content. Like even if it's gonna be like a small metal thing, like random, so you're not gonna notice it's from the base stuff. I make it on my own, basically. Maybe I've used some. I don't know. I got a little bit lazy towards the end.
Sure.
Yeah, so in the beginning I was just I'm gonna make a really fucking good looking thing here with all these photo scanned trees and everything. And then so like the amount of effort put into props has gone down, and now it's like take a picture with my phone and then just make a texture out of that and get it in as quick as possible. But it works. Like the police car thing. I was like, I found I was walking in the city and like, there's one of those police vans I want for my map, and then I just took a bunch of pictures with my phone, looking very suspicious. And then it's just make the texture, like look at the photos, like, and then cut out all the parts that I need, and then make the mesh instantly put out the texture on. So it's not like, I'm not gonna make this high poly car first, then bait down the normals, and then it's like this whole process takes so long. It's like I'm a couple of days, and then I had my car. Same with the bus; it's also very quick.
Right.
And and all the store items, those are like the UVs are projected from only one side, so they're all stretched on the sides. Like everything is from one photo. Nothing has like a backside.
Okay.
Like the quickest way possible to make an asset, and it's like, but there's so many, and they're all on shelf, so you can't really see it, and you don't really if you look for it, you see that they all look like shit. But the what's it called, the quantity over quality there. So, but then the workflow is just so quick, and like getting a small prop in. So I'm just spamming these minor props to get a lot of stuff in there. So
And it's the thematic, right?
What's that?
It's the thematic of being able to say you're in a fully custom supermarket, right? And it's a real down to earth, supermarket in Sweden, right?
I kind of regretted like deciding to make that supermarket. Like I was almost done with the map. I had the center. I just need 3 buildings with interior, and one of them is going to be a supermarket. It's like that's the most time consuming thing you can build. It should have been like, this building is under construction, so there's no furniture, no nothing. So that was what I did with the Insertion 1, the villa. Like, they're moving. They have these moving boxes, and it's like, so there's no things in there, only the big ones, like the sofa and stuff. But I've always, going back to the, like when I saw the Half-Life 2 trailer.
Sure.
And then when they showed the gravity gun, and then you go to the store as a kid, like, oh my God, use the gravity gun in here. And then a supermarket has always been one of those things that I like wanted to build. So it was more that I just realized, I have the skill now to be able to pull this off. So I'm gonna do it. And then it added like 1 year to the to development time.
Well, at the end of the day, I guess I have to ask: do you feel like it was worth the effort? Because, as you said, it's something that you thought about as a kid. You know, imagine taking the gravity gun to one of these things. Imagine just sort of walking into this in a video game. Like you brought it to life inside a video game in that sense. So, do you feel like it was worth the extra year of development?
Yeah, I think so. Would have been nice if everything was like physics as well, but the map was like crashing on load because I had too many shares.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, yeah, that would have been a big no.
That would have been another year of development, probably, just to get physics. So actually, that does bring me to another quick question, I suppose. But technical issues within Source Engine, I mean, you can't even count them, right? There's so many. When you get into a position where you're making a map as ambitious as Insertion 2 is, where it's much larger than your average CSGO map, I will say, and this will make me seem like a bit of an idiot, but when I first saw a bunch of stuff about Insertion 2 and I saw how big some of the environments were, my instinct was that this is a danger zone map. I thought it was going to be like that because it's very large, right? So I didn't realize it was a hostage map the whole way through, and then that kind of cemented how, like, you're not just trying to make a large map, you're trying to make like the large map, if you get what I mean. Like, it's meant to be very maybe your magnum opus, like some of your best work. So being as that seems to be the case, I was curious as to, like, how many different issues did you face? And I guess some of them are still technically there with the fog, and I think it's the boosted player contrast that's causing the fog issues. So can you say a few words about some technical hurdles you had to get through? Maybe some funny stories that in retrospect, they're funny now, but maybe in the moment they were very frustrating. Anything like that spring to mind?
The crashing on load definitely is one of the, and it has been there for 3 years. But the way around it was launch another map first and then switch.
Okay.
And then it worked. And I don't know, but then like before the time before release, and I tweeted like, "Oh, this crashing on load, please help." And then someone wrote like, "Oh, you should hop into the map core something."
Probably Discord server, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So then the map core, like the core map core guys grew. They helped me out, and I was like super grateful still. Like a lot of technical support from them, and then also a bunch of people like reached out. Oh, can I help you with this? And like some of the technical stuff, like people want to help with optimization, and like I understand it a little bit, but I never really got into it. And then they I send them the map, and then they send it back, and it has all these hint brushes, and like it's cut up in a weird way, and it's working beautifully. and then I can have this store filled with props, and it works. And I can even I have several open doors, and it still kind of works. And I get the same like performance, the FPS as when I play Ancient. I guess I don't know if that is like much worse than all other maps, but
it seems comparable. I mean, it's obviously from Valve themselves, so they know how to work for optimization. So it looks like it sounds like that was a big step, like in improving the map and getting it ready for more people to play.
And I think I learned a lot about video games from working at DICE with the like performance with the what's it called, transparent textures and stuff, or transparent meshes, and like so most of the branches I've cut the mesh, like cut out the holes in the mesh basically, and the Insertion 1 trees, they're made the texture is like the branches are going into the center, and then in the material file it was like made to rotate to simulate wind, but then it was like, no, this is like you get, if I remove this, I get like 2 FPS more or something. And then it was pretty high performance or expensive back in the day. So they asked me to remove that. But then that leaves these very big square polygons with a lot of there's a lot of transparency, and then that's just super bad. So the first one is very poorly made. But yeah, so in the second one, everything's much more detailed, and nothing is fading away. Like all these small grass things, nothing. It's when you get to a certain distance,
Yeah, it
it
pops
just
out, right?
yeah. So none of that. Everything is rendered at all times, and it still works. So that's pretty nice. But yeah, and then I don't really remember the question, but something technical support.
Yeah. Just if there's any stories that made you like, or any moments that happened that were just like crazy, like, oh, I can't believe I have to deal with this issue now. But it sounds like most of it was the crashing. That must have been the most frustrating part.
Also, the day that Valve released the fog update,
Yes.
I'm like, no. That was my motivation. Like, took a bit there, so I basically stopped working on the map for a couple of months.
And that's not something you can control either, right? That's just like an engine level change, basically, by the sounds of it. Like somehow with the way that it intersects with fog. And I guess, I mean, given that you might have some still have some contacts at Valve, is this something that like we can look forward to being resolved later, or?
Yeah, it's getting fixed soon. I think
Okay.
I've gotten confirmation that it's fixed and it's going to be patched in. So I guess the next patch might have the fix, and then I can just have to implement it and recompile the map, and then I have to go back to Insertion 1 and fix it there as well.
Fair enough.
Maybe I was thinking, like, should I do a remastered and then like use the new trees or whatever, or make some new, and just make it look good, because launching that map now, it doesn't really look that good.
And that brings me pretty nicely to my next question for you is do you have any specific plans sort of on the horizon for what to do now? Because I'll speak a little bit from my own personal experiences. Once you finally release something, especially if you've been working at it for something like 4 years, like what you've done, at this point, like there's almost, it's just like relief. It's not even necessarily like complete happiness or joy. There's some of that too, but a lot of it is just like finally it's done. So finally it's out there. So I'm sure you must have taken some time to like think about that and feel that sort of relief wash over you. But was there a point where like has the gears started turning already? Like I want to do something else. I want to remaster Insertion 1. Anything that like set in stone? Definitely something you're going to try soon, or still waiting to figure that out?
Well, I've had two projects like ongoing at the same time for this last. Well, the Insertion is 4.5-ish years, and then the other project is 5 years or 6. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's a like a 2D game that I started making in Game Maker, and then I stopped working on it to focus on Insertion. But I've gotten quite far with the game, so I'm gonna wrap that up. It's like it's gonna be pretty small, but it's one of those shmups, I think it's called.
Okay, yeah.
Side scroller 2D, spaceship shooting spaceships, and it's gonna be like it's tied in with music, sort of. And there's an album. I contacted a guy who made the music. Like, can I use this? Make a game, and it's four songs. So I'm gonna make 4 maps, and
Okay.
then a bunch of power ups and stuff for each map. And I've made 2 maps, almost 2. So my plan now is like, fix all the bugs and everything with Insertion, of course, until I can let that go, and then I'm gonna take a little break, and then finish up that game.
Yeah, that sounds pretty exciting. Of course, it's nice to. One of the things that surprised me about the mapping community is like so many of these of mappers don't just work on CS:GO content, right? They also work on like their own games, like you were just saying, or they work for other companies, like you said, Dice earlier. So that was an interesting revelation for me because like I've got my own aspirations to do stuff too, but I mostly just work in one game, right? So like I'm thinking of my own like track record or whatever is I don't really experiment nearly as much. A lot of the guys in the CS:GO scene, I guess maybe because there's a lot of transferable skills that you have, right? You can say like you learn doing stuff from CS and you can bring it to other avenues. So my next question in that respect is, obviously 4 years is a long time to develop anything. Is there a specific couple of things that you learned from the process of making Insertion 2 that you want to put into practice going forward? Sort of like what you were talking about with remastering Insertion 1, maybe is like, you put some of the skills that you learned or some techniques that you mastered since then for any content, not just necessarily a CSGO map either. But is there anything in particular that was like a big lesson that you learned from working on Insertion 2?
I guess one thing is like really well. solidifying my workflow or something, like with taking a photo,
Yes.
like make a mesh really quick, and it's like you can't tell the difference. The end result is like it's good. And if it's not good, like put some garbage on it, and then it's good. Or like
Okay.
dress it, put
Right.
in things. So I guess that, like this technique with like making the texture first and then the mesh, in regards to like well, anything. So the, like I mentioned, the bus or the police vehicle, because like making a whole mesh and then now I'm gonna do the UV the UV mapping, and then that's sort of like white boxing a whole level, and then now I'm gonna art dress it. It's just you gotta work smart, only like smart with your mind, so you don't get fatigued or
Yes.
demotivated.
Right. Work smarter, not harder is a saying we have in English anyway. So
Yeah.
it's probably something like that, right?
Yeah, but if the focus on the end result, sort of, then smarter, not harder, would be to gray box the whole level.
Sure.
In a way, I don't know. It's a so you don't may have to redo areas, because like I've redone the center a lot of times. How the train station connects to the thing. It's like I've redone that so many times, and like, and one time I redid it because like people with wheelchairs couldn't get to the train, and that didn't make any sense. So I didn't want to make another elevator outside, so I had to redo it. Lessons. I don't know. I guess that in regards to that, like make the center first.
Right.
When it's like specific to open world level design, I guess, with attack, defend, gameplay. Very specific lesson.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know.
It still applies, I think. I mean, if you imagine working on pretty much anything, like I guess the abstract way would be to work on the most interesting or important element first and build around that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Cool. So I guess go ahead.
Maybe don't overscope, or maybe overscope means that you couldn't finish.
Right.
But
Yeah.
don't have big scope, because it's annoying. It's not fun after 4 years.
Of course. Yeah. So you think your next project will maybe take less than 4 years, hopefully?
Hopefully, yeah.
Fair enough.
And then something about work. Yeah, this is not a lesson from Insertion specifically, but from like, if you have a problem with your pipeline, fix that. It's always worth it.
Yes.
I made like a birthday present game for my brother a few years ago, and when he was a teenager, he played guitar on stage with a shitty band. So I made like a Guitar Hero sequence out of that in Game Maker, but I didn't make a tool for it where I can just play it and then it saves the timing. So I was hand placing these things like above the game level and had them scroll down, and it took me, I don't know, 1 month, 2 months to make like a 3 minutes long game sequence.
Right.
And it's like, why didn't I just program a system where I could do that? So anytime you notice like, optimize your workflow is almost always worth it. Spend that extra time.
Yep. I can agree with that for sure. So that's a pretty good lesson or like a advice to any upcoming map maker in that sense. So do you, my final question for you is, do you see Counter-Strike as, like obviously it's been a massive part of your recent work with mapping. Do you see it continuing to be like that? Do you think you'll stick around for a couple more maps, or do you have your eyes set on like working more with this game maker stuff that you're doing, the shoot 'em up, or anything else that's more on the horizon? Is there a long future for Oskmos still left in Counter-Strike, or do you think that you're just about finished? What do you make of that?
I've been thinking that I'm finished. Like I can't keep this up. And then it's like, what am I gonna do next? Insertion 3. Let's. I can't make something with a source related with a 3 after that.
Oh,
That
true.
isn't-
Yeah.
No, but it's also like you want to improve on the previous one, and
Yes.
this one took 4 years. Like, how am I gonna? Yeah, I can of course focus and work smarter, but it's also, it needs to be fun. So I don't see that happening. So then it would be, I don't know, similar amount of years probably. But I always wanted to build something set in the archipelago. But I'm not sure that will work for CSGO. Especially not because of what happened in Norway a couple of years back. So I don't know. If I feel the urge to just build something, maybe something smaller, like a, what's it called, wingman.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Or maybe later if they release Counter-Strike 2 or whatever with new tools and hop on that. But I have a lot of things that I want to build, but it's mostly like different kind of environments, and I have a lot of ideas for games that I think I will probably move into making my games more than Counter-Strike stuff, I think.
All right. Well, I look forward to whatever's coming next, and of course, congratulations on finally releasing Insertion 2. Tack for din Todd.
Thank you.